how do we actually start using this in our business? The easiest way is to start using Custom GPTs. So again, Kleenex, Q-tips, it's a brand. Custom GPTs, I say that word, it is just a customized version of a large language model that you have provided with specific instructions and specific knowledge. So if we don't have any increase in the advancement of the capabilities of these models, we have already far surpassed what we can do just by leveraging this technology properly currently, right? So if we're looking at just a 10% efficiency gain for every employee, we're looking at on average about 18 hours saved if we're helping them 3 to 5 different tasks that they do on a regular basis by using a custom GPT or a customized AI model that helps them do their job. The equivalent of that in a 100-person organization is around 10 full-time employees, right? So how do we actually do that? The first thing is to identify what are their core responsibilities, then build the custom GPTs that are tailored to those tasks, again, 3 to 5 of those custom GPTs, and then train them on how to use these GPTs to do their job more effectively. These are the in-depth steps of this. So for step 1, identifying tasks suitable for custom GPTs, you want to be looking at current workflows. What are the things that you're doing on a day-to-day basis that take 20, 30, 40 minutes or more, and that follow a specific framework, that have consistency, brand guidelines, things like that. Look for processes that could benefit from AI-assisted decision-making. So we have limited decision-making capabilities every single day. So let's offload some of that to one of these AI models. Our custom GPT is a really great asset for that. After you've identified what is the task that you want to do, you need to start pulling together the relevant data and information. So brand standards, guidelines, SOP frameworks, documentation, things about how you go and do your job more effectively, or you go and do your job every single day. You want to start pulling all that information together. Doing this also allows you to look at and identify any gaps in the process, right? So if you don't have the necessary information to give to a language model, you then have the opportunity to say, all right, well, I need this information. Let me go pull it together because it can probably help my employees do their job more effectively as well. So you're going to be able to get better quality data on the back end of that. You do want to make sure that it's up to date and in a good format. So you don't want to make all of your data in CSV format or PDF. You want to make sure it's in a format that is acceptable and easy for a language model to understand. That is just plain text. It loves text. You can also do images and things like that, but text is the easiest for it to pull this information together. And the last thing is to design the prompt and instructions. So all the things that we just talked about before, you want to be clear and specific with its instructions and how it should operate. And you want to define its tone and purpose, right? So give it a clear set of instructions of how it should be operating. If you don't feel like learning how to be a prompt engineer, I have 2 resources here. This is a custom GPT that I've put together that will create these instructions for you. And this is Anthropic, which is the maker of Claude. They have a API work console, essentially, that you can go in and sign up for. And it will let you put in just basic instructions about what your job is and what you're trying to do with the prompt. And it will give you a well-structured and formatted prompt in return. So I really love the Anthropic prompt generator. It does a really good job at creating really well-structured prompts with very little input from you. So let's talk about some of the examples of how these custom GPTs work. And this is kind of really where the rubber meets the road. So when I work with the Department of Government Enablement in the UAE, I worked with the chairman. He has a process where he has to review audit proposals from the Big Four consulting firms. They're 200 to 300 pages long and takes him about 4 hours to do that on a regular basis. He told me that he has a framework of how he goes about and does this. So first he has to look at, does it meet this certain criteria? It can't move forward unless it has these certain points, right? And that was the first step. After it does pass that review guideline, it moves to each part of the framework and he has to create content on the back end of that. So what we did is we created a custom GPT that essentially took every part of that framework and put it out in sequential order. So the first thing that the GPT does in a prompt chaining, like as you mentioned before, it will go through and upload the document and say, does it meet the standards? And it will go through and read the document and say, yes, it does meet the standards. Here's the reason why it qualifies for the standards that we've set out. Once it does that, generates the summary, and then it moves step by step through each part of the framework. So step 1 is to pull out the full documentation for the numbers and things like that. Then the stakeholders, so on and so forth, and it goes and works down the process with the different frameworks that it has. and then it will create all the content that he would normally do on every time that he works through these audit proposals. So a process that would normally take 4 hours, 3 to 4 hours, is now down to 45 minutes. And that is supposed to say 45 minutes. But after we created the GPT, it came back the next day. He said, I did this last night. It performed flawlessly, and it only took me 45 minutes to do it. So a huge time saving and a lot of brain and mental energy. If he's doing this multiple times per week, now it's only a 45-minute process, and he doesn't have to spend quite as much time on it, and he can move through the process quicker and have better insights on the back end, because all he has to do is review it for its accuracy. Something similar to this, I work with an immigration firm in Arizona, and they told me they have about a 19-hour process of creating T-visa and VAWA documentation for victims of human trafficking. And they had a similar framework to have 6 parts of how they create these draft declarations. You have to include all 6 parts in this declaration for a T-visa. And what their process is they have 2 full-length interviews that they record and transcribe. And then they have their attorney notes. And then the attorney has to go through and review all of that and start creating this draft declaration from scratch. So what we did is we created a system of custom GPTs. So it's not just one, it's a multiple of them. And each one of their frameworks has a lot of different requirements inside of the framework step. So we turned each one of those framework steps into a custom GPT, and it goes in sequence. So first they upload their transcripts and all of the attorney notes, and it will generate an executive summary. And the attorney gets to say, I want to also include this, this, and this, or give it this specific direction. And then it will go through each step of the framework and produce the content from the client's tone of voice in the first person point of view, writing it as if they were the client. And the attorney can say, this wasn't correct. You need to include this piece of information or this for each section of the framework that the GPT is currently working on. And it just goes sequentially down the line to create the content for each of those different framework pieces that they have. And at the end of it, they will have a fully written piece of content ready to go for review with the client to submit to the court's office. This process to actually write that full draft declaration takes about 9 hours. In the hands of their most skilled drafter, it dropped down to 1 hour. So a full 8 hours of savings just by putting in a set of custom GPTs that have been trained and done in a specific way. So a huge amount of time savings. This is a use case that we put for Atlas Copco, one of the companies I mentioned earlier. They have thousands of resumes for all the different jobs that they're putting out on a day-to-day basis. This is actually 2 parts. So what we did is we created a custom GPT to take in a job application document and say, here's what we're looking for in the job application. Create the instructions for how this next custom GPT should be screening and looking at the applicants. And once they do that, they load all the applicant files, and essentially it turns it into a conversation. So the HR professional is able to say, all right, who are the top 5 candidates that meet this set of criteria? And the GPT will surface those people, and then they say, all right, well, why are they capable? Why are they the best fit for this? What are their qualifications? And are they able to handle this other scenario or this other different type of a piece of work that we need to put together for them? Right? It allows them to go and ask questions about all the resumes as a whole, rather than trying to sift through each of the individual job applications moving forward. And they told me one of the things that was I was really stuck on this was I was afraid that they wouldn't be able to look at all the resumes because of this. And they said, we don't look at all of them already anyway. So this is going to help us. And I said, okay, all right, that's fine. But it allows to basically ask a question, right? Like, think about if you've hired someone and you've just gone through all these resumes and nobody is getting exactly what you're wanting, or you're kind of like looking for a very specific thing. What if you could just ask them and say, well, have you done this? Or are you capable of doing this type of piece of work for me? And you can ask that with this type of setup to say, who would be the best fit to be able to use their skills with SQL databases and the ability to develop client proposals at the same time. And it's going to go and look at all the resumes and say, well, this person has a background in tech and has worked in SQL databases, but they also spent 5 years as a front-end sales rep as well. So this person is a great fit for exactly what you're looking for. So the result, right? So reduces time spent on initial resume screening, Consistency and objectivity is another thing on this too, right? We're all bringing our own personal biases, especially in a hiring process. This allows us to kind of take a step back and get an objective perspective and look at this on how we can screen people. And if you have multiple people looking at different resumes, you can standardize between those people to make sure that you're not missing anything. All right, we're almost at the end here. The last thing that we'll talk about are some other examples of custom GPTs that you can put in place. So Meeting Notes GPT is pretty much as it says. If you have different types of meetings, whether it's client-facing proposals, whether it's sales calls or project updates, status, things like that, you can create specifically structured instructions for each of those different types of meetings. You record the call, automatically upload it to Google Drive, whatever your storage facility is, send it to the specialized version of whichever Meeting Notes GPT you want, and it's going to format the response for action items, executive summaries, bullet points, anything like that, for how you like to create and get meeting notes for that type of meeting specifically. And it can then email that to whoever was involved, or also attach it to your CRM, storage database, whatever you need. These are just rough examples of what you can do with it, right? Proposal GPT is something that I do on a weekly basis. Normally it takes me about 45 minutes to create a proposal, but my process here is that I will transcribe and record my calls, also take notes at the same time. And I have a proposal framework document that includes all the things that I put in each one of my proposals and just expectations of what is going to go in each section, just rough bullet points. And I'll go into ChatGPT and I'll say, here's my proposal framework, here's my notes, here's my transcript of the call. This process, the proposal is going to be about $5,000. It's going to take 6 weeks. These are the extra key pieces of information. Go and create the proposal for me. And I have a fully written proposal in probably 10 minutes with me editing afterwards versus 45. So it takes a lot of the stress out of me doing that on a day-to-day basis. Email newsletter, pretty simple, but if you want to keep your audience up to date, just have a quick automation that pulls the top trending news for each of your industries or whatever you're wanting to put information out for on a regular basis. Have a GPT create a just brief summary of what that article is and include the link to the original article and send it out to that person or to your email list. So it's a great way to have regular content that you don't really have to put much effort for, right? Social content GPT, pretty self-explanatory. We all have to create social content. We don't necessarily love doing it. So let's let GPT do it for us. And you can load in your brand guidelines, how you like to create social content, hashtag strategy. This can help you create the post captions as well as create the social strategy and help you understand your analytics as well. So depending on how you set this up, it can also help you with video scripts too, if you're looking to do that. Or if you want it to create video, use Google and it can actually create the social videos for you if you don't feel like being in front of a camera.